Yeah. Yeah, again, without defining what true means, that's just sort of empty, I think.
Um, how about someone can be certain something is true yet still be mistaken? I think we talked about
Well, that's
that a
obvious.
little bit.
Yeah, I've certainly been certain about a lot of things in my life that turned out to be wrong.
Yeah.
That's pretty common, I think.
hmm Yeah, yeah. I, it's interesting how we line up really closely on some of these, and some of the other ones we don't.
Well, let's explore the ones where we don't.
Yeah. Yeah. Those
Yeah,
that's
it's
more
boring if we're in agreement on everything.
right. Well, and what I think is happening is we have different definitions for words.
Yes, and I've
Um,
abandoned the use of several words too.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
creates a problem.
right. And that's kind of what I was saying the other day is if you don't agree on definitions for words, you're going to have two different conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's fundamental to at least recognize that we have different definitions for these words, and maybe you can still proceed. But I mean, so you may not have to. Well, yeah. Well, yeah. Anyway, yes, I agree.
Yeah. So I think that's the main reason
Well,
why.
so where do we differ? In what words?
Um, well, I guess I'm convinced that there is an objective reality, even if we don't have access to it.
Okay. Well, I mean, you're convinced. Well, see, I would almost say that that's trivial. I mean, I don't have any problem with that. I mean, it seems reasonable to me that there is some sort of ultimate reality, but I just don't have access to it. So therefore, it seems irrelevant whether there is or there isn't an objective.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how would our behavior change if we found out that there wasn't, if we think there was, and there was if we think there wasn't? Like,
Well, but
if,
I don't foresee a possibility of answering that question. I
yeah.
mean, really, I mean, I say it may be in the future, but presently in my own life, that's just off the table.
Yeah.
You
It,
know?
it it's meaning would you yeah, it's kind of meaningless if it has no effect on
Yeah,
our behavior.
yeah. I can't. Like I say, it seems reasonable to me that there is some sort of objective reality. It also
hmm
seems pretty obvious that I don't have access to it. And if there wasn't, if somehow, again, what would it take to convince me of the truth, or of either of those positions? It just seems to me. Well, I don't say you're convinced that there is. Well, yeah, what does that mean? You're convinced? You mean you're 99% convinced? Are you 100% convinced, or?
No, no, on the 0 100 scale, I can't think of any statement that I would assign 0 or 100.
Okay, all right. So then we're in the same position. You suspect there is something like whatever the hell an objective reality could possibly mean.
Yeah.
That seems like a reasonable.
It's my
Uh,
assumption.
yeah, yeah,
It's my assumption, my conscious assumption that there is an objective reality that we all share, but we interpret it differently.
yeah, something like that. Yeah, I don't think I don't think that's a difference for us.
Yeah, yeah.
So what else?
Um,
Where else do we differ?
well, um, I'm convinced. I'm convinced that words
Wait a minute,
are
convinced
a
that mean more or
creation.
less convinced, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's my assumption that words are created by the beings that use them, and they define them.
Um,
And
but
I said beings
yeah,
because of the whales or
yeah. Who knows?
other animals
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
make noises that communicate.
yeah. I got it. Um, are they created by? You see, that's the thing. Is language created by individuals or by the group itself? See, because my sense is that language really isn't something inside your skull or my skull, but it's something in the community that invades my skull, and that language actually is transpersonal. It's not something that
Right.
individuals are actually in control of. And so
Yeah,
even when an individual coins the word, like I put the words language monkey together, and
uh,
I like that. But I didn't create. I mean, I read and I think, and I'm a member of a community of thinkers, and those words popped up in my head, but I'm not sure
mhm.
I invented that idea.
Right. I would say people in this context would be um, not individual.
Okay,
Like
the
the
community itself
yeah,
somehow.
the community creates words and define their meaning.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I don't have any problem with that.
Yeah. Another question might be like, would would I have a language if I were the only person on an island and I never
Yeah.
saw anybody else? Would language be around?
Yeah. Well, I would say you have a navigation system,
Hmm.
and that's where language came from. But you wouldn't have if there was nobody to talk to, you wouldn't have language like we have it now, but you would still probably have a navigation system. I think that's part of our mammalian or not even mammal. I mean, even insects have navigation systems.
Hmm.
So you'd clearly have a navigation system and an ability to think and find your way around and manipulate various things. But yeah, but that wouldn't fit the definition of language the way it's usually, you know.
Right, because I wouldn't have to communicate that
Yeah,
navigation system
yeah,
with anything
yeah.
else.
No, there's nobody to talk to. So,
Yeah. Like what language would I use to talk to myself if I was in that position?
well, that would be your navigation system, and it
Uh,
wouldn't be. It probably. I don't. That's a good question. I'm going to have to think about that one because I mean, like my dog knows the yard, knows where stuff is. You know, it's somewhat complicated. There's some trees and there's another building in the back, and he has and he knows where to go and how to get there and how to do things. So his navigation system is quite complex
hmm.
and allows him to do all sorts of things. And he's
Yeah.
able to think in some way.
Yeah. If he got dropped in the forest somewhere, he might make it back to the house before you did.
Maybe. I mean, it depends upon his senses. That maybe he's got senses that I'm not unaware of. That there are cases apparently of animals finding their way back in impossible situations. I don't know how
Yeah.
truthful stories are, but I've heard stories like that.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
yeah, so yeah, I think animals are quite sophisticated in their ability to navigate and think, really, but they probably can't think about what they're going to do tomorrow. I think they
Hmm.
can deal with their present circumstances, but and
Yeah,
don't
and they don't
worry
they
about
don't
what they did
ponder
yet.
the
Yeah,
yeah, they don't sit around and ponder how the dogs of the 16th century thought.
Yeah, probably not. Yeah, or even what they did a week ago. You know,
Right.
that asshole dog that scared the shit. You know, God damn it! If I see him again, yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they're quite intelligent though in dealing. Did I tell you that story about the dog I had years ago that did something astounding that I'm still amazed by? So
I don't know if I've heard this one.
I was a when I was in college, I had a janitorial business. I cleaned doctors' offices at night,
Hmm.
and I used to bring my dog with me. And the building was a big square building, but it was open in the middle. It was one story. There were like six doctors there, and a laboratory, and the whole thing formed a square, but inside was an open atrium, and there were two gates on the opposite sides that you could pull down at night that locked the inside so that nobody could get in. Okay, and so I'd go in there and I opened the gate at one end to get in with my equipment and stuff. And I brought my dog with me, and he just sort of roamed around, there, and in any case, so I take a break once in a while, and in the middle of the atrium was some ferns and some plants and stuff, and there were these big chips of bark that were on the ground to keep the weeds from growing. Okay, you know what I'm talking about? If you've ever seen these.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
landscaping.
yeah, yeah. Anyway, they were maybe 3 inches long and maybe an inch wide or something. I mean, all sorts of different sizes, but average. And 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 I would throw these things at one gate was up and you could had access, and the other gate was down, and the gate was essentially a bunch of horizontal bars that were spaced about an inch apart or so, and the gate would roll up or roll down. And anyway, I'd throw these chips against that gate, and they'd bounce off it, and he'd uh, get it and bring it back to me. And I'd spend a few minutes every night when I was there doing that. And one night I threw one of the chips, and it landed just right so that it went through the gate. Okay, it had never done that before. It went through the gate and landed about a foot on the other side of the gate. And the dog ran up to there and he was looking at it and he just stopped, quietly. And he stood there for, I don't know, it's hard. This is many years ago, but maybe 10 seconds, maybe 30 seconds. I don't know. Anyway, all of a sudden, he tore off in the opposite direction, went out the gate that was open on the other side, went all the way around the building and got that piece of wood. And then ran all the way around the building again and in through the other gate that was open and got it.
Huh.
And so he sat there, like I say, for 10 or I don't know how many seconds looking at that situation, and it snapped. It's not like he's sort of, I mean, he just instantly, boom, he just took off in the opposite direction. He knew exactly what he was doing and where he was going. That stunned me. It still stuns me. But that was his navigation system kicking in.
Yeah. That's yeah, I often get surprised by how smart, animals can be. Um, we have cats and they're indoors because we have a lot of raccoons and coyotes and stuff out here. So,
Ah, yeah.
and I'm convinced they would never, they would not survive 10 minutes outside. But they have an astounding inventory of what's on the floor. And it's like, well, this is their whole world. They
Yeah,
have no other things to investigate. They have this limited world. And so yeah, it makes sense that they're going to notice if a piece of food is in a different spot on the floor, because of their
yeah,
that's
that's
all they
their
have to work
environment.
with.
Yeah, that's their
Right.
navigation system. They know every inch of that place.
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly.
And say, I say that's not. I mean, it's very similar to language. There's a linearity to navigation. if you're on your way somewhere, you notice that you have to go by this place where the big black rock is, and then go left, and then to where the bush with the red berries is, and then go downhill. But there's a linear sequence to that,
Hmm.
to navigating an environment, and that's very much again what language is structured like. It's yeah. Well, anyway, this is all highly theoretical.
Yeah. Well, there's this other idea that popped into my head that I heard about a few years back, where um, and I'm probably going to get some of this wrong, but there was this part of the military that decided to recruit Navajo Native
Oh yeah, the
Americans,
code
I
talk.
think,
Yeah.
where they wanted to use them to track in Vietnam, I think. And because they were enlisted in the military, they were forced to shave their heads. And after they had their heads shaved, they weren't able to track anymore.
Really
And so the idea was their long hair helped them navigate.
interesting. I can't imagine how that could be, but where did you, if you have any references to that, I'd love
There's
to
a
see.
book yeah, there's a book that talks about that. If I find the title and stuff, I'll send it to you.
Yeah. No, don't
Um,
worry. If you don't, I mean, I've got plenty of stuff to keep me busy, but that's a
yeah,
fascinating story.
you could probably just search, Native Americans lost tracking ability in Vietnam or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I could have the wrong.
Yeah, you
Um,
could be nuts.
well, I guess what I'm saying is it may not be Navajo. I could have
Oh,
that wrong,
ah,
or maybe
okay.
it wasn't Vietnam. It was
Yeah,
something
no, but it
like
was
that though.
something in the military and
Yeah,
and
yeah,
navigating and cutting the hair and well, like I
right.
said, I can't imagine how that could be, but that's fascinating. And if you do find it, a reference to it, I'd love to see it. And if you
Yeah,
don't worry about it because, like I say, I'm busy enough as it is.
yeah, yeah.